Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We are from Group 12 of English Education Department, and we are from Class 3C. First of all, introduce myself. My name is Irma Lorenza Sitanggang. Everyone called me Irma. And my NPM is 201063100600 and 686. Next, my friends and also my partner of this group, let her introduce herself.
Hello everyone, let me introduce myself. My name is Indah Nuraeni. Everyone can call me Indah. And my NPM is 201063106008 and 5.
So in this video, we will give you guys some explanations about Indian, Chinese, and Malay accents. The material is about the subjects we are studying right now, namely the subjects are namely phonetics and phonology, as you can see on the screen.
First is introduction. English is international language. Many people have studied English, and English has spread all around the world. To be good speak English must good pronunciation. And we know that the accent, every country is different because the accent is following the mother language. When we hear the strangers speak English is unique. Almost speak English be the accent their country. In ASEAN, many people speak English with their accent, especially Malay, Indian, and Chinese. We know that several countries in ASEAN former colony by US or England. That cause there are former colonies such as language. As an example is Malay and Indian. Therefore, this video discussing about Malay, Indian, and Chinese accent. Hopefully, the viewers could get information more about Malay, Indian, and Chinese accent.
And then next, what is accent? Accent is a part of dialect concerning local pronunciation. Vocabulary and grammar are described elsewhere. Series of dialects of the language, English language. Spoken English shows great variation across regions where it's the predominant language. For example, the UK has the largest variation of accents of any country, meaning that there is no single British accent. This article provides an overview of the numerous identifiable variations in pronunciation. Such distinctions usually derive from the phonetic inventory of local dialects, as well as from broader differences in the standard English of different primary speaking population. Secondary English speakers tend to carry over the intonation and phonetics of their mother tongue in English speech. For more details, see non-native pronunciations of English. Primary English speakers show great variability in terms of regional accents. Some, such as Pennsylvania Dutch English, are easily identified by key characteristics, but others are more obscure or easily confused. Broad regions can possess forms as identified below. For instance, tongue located less than 10 miles or 16 kilometers from the city of Manchester, such as Bolton, Rochdale, Oldham, and Salford, each have distinct accents, all of which together comprise the broader accent of Lancashire. The sub-dialects are very similar to one another, but non-local listeners can identify firm differences. On the other side of the spectrum, Australia has a general accent that is virtually consistent over thousands of kilometers, and English accents can differ enough to create room for misunderstanding. For example, the pronunciation of pearl in some variants of Scottish English can sound like the entirely unrelated word pedal to an American ear. For a summary of the differences between accents, see International Phonetics Alphabet Chart for English dialects. Indian English is a class of varieties of the English language spoken in India and among the Indian diaspora elsewhere in the world. English is used by the Indian government for communication along with Hindi. As enshrined in the Constitution, English is an official language of 7 states and 5 union territories, and also additional official language of 7 states and 1 union territory. English is also the sole official language of the judiciary of India, unless a state governor or legislature mandates the use of a regional language, or the president has given approval for the use of regional languages is courts. One thing I commonly hear from people who were born and raised in India is that their difficulties being understood in the US stem from their British accent. Indian accents are indeed influenced by British English, but that is not the end of the story. Indian accented English has its own unique patterns that set it apart from British English. Some aspects of Indian accented English and British English are similar in comparison to American English, such as a dropping of vocalic R sounds such as the R at the end of the words for and car, and the pronunciation of a clear T sound in words like butter and pronounced as a quick D in American English. There are, however, many distinct differences between British English and Indian accented English. The melody of a person's speech, the placement of stress within words, and the placement of stress within sentences may be different in Indian accented English from both British and American English. In addition, speakers with Indian accents have a different production of some consonant sounds. Indian accented speakers tend to stop there for the T sounds, tick and then, making the T sound like a T or a D. The V and W sounds are often used interchangeably, so vine may sound like wine, and vice versa. In addition, some speakers may curl their tongue back to produce sounds such as T, D, and giving these sounds a different quality than we hear in American or British English. Speakers with Indian accents may also have several differences in the way they produce vowel sounds. You can hear a lot of classic features of Indian accented English, such as vowel change, consonant change, and stress change as compared with British and American English. Speakers with Indian accented English have their own unique pronunciation, parents that should be recognized. I'm sure if you are a speaker with an Indian accent, you could also provide us with some interesting tidbits about regional accent differences within India. But when when it comes down to Indian accent, I can guess exactly why Indian English sounds different. Neither a native English speaker nor a pure Indian would get it. But if you're familiar with more than one language, then you know the difference. Even though I don't know Hindi, but I can relate the accent of Hindi with Bengali, which sounds pretty similar. Anyway, a big difference of the Indian English with English is the letter T, because even though the even though we write T as T, but the actual pronunciation of T varies. For example, most of the time T doesn't sound like T, but T in general. That's why when I'm saying two, it's not really two, but two, more precisely do. The pronunciation of T as T is followed universally by all the native English speakers. However, the pronunciation of T varies even among the native speakers. For instance, when I was listening to Deep Purple's Smoke on the Water, it sounded very strange for me. I mean, Ian Gillan sings "smoke on the water." He like literally pronounced all the letters. He sings something like water. It just doesn't sound like water, the American water. First, I thought it's Ian Gillan, not the British accent, because I've never met a British dude anyway. Because a lot of British singers also pronounce water like the American water, but turns out Ian Gillan pronounced it right. But it's Ian Gillan who was singing in British accent. All those British singers who pronounce water are singing in American accent. So the T is a strange letter which sounds different in different accents. Nevertheless, the original pronunciation of the T is T for the most of the case. And this is one of the video footage of an Indian speaking in public. It's Vandana Shiva, an Indian scholar, environmental activist, and Indian anti-globalization.
So I could actually have spent all my life in the city and been a Mumbaikar if I had stayed on at the BARC, the Bhabha Atomic Research Center. Um, and why did I go back to my hometown, Dehradun? And why do I do what I do today? It's a combination of the fact that I learned a lot from women in my region in the Himalaya. Peasant women, never been to school, top biodiversity experts, changed the policies of this country. The policies that used to say the most important product of the Himalaya is timber, and they changed it to the most important product of the forests of the Himalaya is soil and water and pure air. This was the movement Chipko. And in the 70s, I got involved as a volunteer. And can you imagine just the deepest love for the forests, bringing about a change through a totally nonviolent movement? It opened my eyes to another way of looking at the world. And I learned two lessons then. First, that nature is not out there. We are part of it. And second, that protecting nature is not a luxury. Our Prime Minister still needs to learn few lessons from women like that, who thinks environmentalism is a problem because it interferes with growth. It's not a problem because the very foundation of every economic activity is the rivers and the land and the forests and the biodiversity. And all the top readers are gathered right now in Cancun, trying to figure out how to avoid disastrous climate change. But the lobbies that have caused climate change are preventing it from happening. If you just look at what's happening in the area of food, and it's delightful to be here with you all opposite a kitchen. Very rare to have food for thought and food for the body in the same space. So congratulations to the organizers for choosing this venue. Now, what's the reality of food in India right now? First, that on different approximations, between half to 3/4 of this country isn't eating enough. At a global level, 1 billion people are going hungry. Another thing unprecedented in our long, long history, in one decade, from 97 to 2007, 200,000 farmers have committed suicide. 1 million children are dying every year in this country for lack of food. And there are studies done in Maharashtra, in Thane, which show that in the tribal areas before 91, before the new economic policies, there wasn't dramatic hunger, but now there is. We are giving 1.3 trillion rupees, that's bigger than our defense budget, as subsidies for poisoning our soil for synthetic fertilizers. You add up all these things that seem to be different aspects. Some people look at children's malnutrition, some people look at climate change, some people look at land. It's all interconnected, and it's all interconnected through a very perverse way of thinking that we have inherited from a highly patriarchal form of thought. Capitalist patriarchy gave us first the assumption that nature is dead when it's very much alive. First error we need to correct, and women are correcting it. Second, you have to declare nature dead to establish man's empire over nature, always man's empire over nature. That means all species can be exterminated, people can be dispossessed. It was actually called by Bacon the birth of masculine time. Literally, they shaped a way of thinking that would be a masculine mode. But it obviously robbed the men of half their brain and women of all of their thinking, till now we have a resurgence of a holistic thought. Inevitable consequences of it, a mechanistic view of the world that could not see interconnections, that could not see cycles. And the second thing I love about this space is the circles, not linear benches. We're all sitting in circles. Now, if only we could think in terms of circles.
And the second is Chinese accent. As you listen to Chinese accent English, it's important to remember some of its key characteristics. Consonant sounds in gender pronouns are sometimes misspoken. Voiced consonant sounds are expressed differently in Chinese compared to English too, as are consonant sounds at the end of syllables. English also has more vowel sounds than Mandarin or Cantonese. Chinese and different ones. So Chinese speakers of English often speak with less distinct vowel sound and vowel use that is different from native English. And of course, Like all non-native English speakers, Chinese speakers have a different intonation in their own native language. So the sound of connected speech in Chinese English will be different from that of native English and from that of other language. Chinese is much more tonal than English, which is almost monotone in comparison, and the Chinese rhythm of speech is syllable based, while English rhythm is based more on phrases, sentences, and longer segments of speech. Because of this difference, Chinese English may sound like it has twang, almost musical change in tone not found in native English. And Chinese can also sound a lot more coffee. People who are used to less syllabic language may have trouble following their more abrupt syllable use a strongly accent Chinese English. When my business English student asks for help understanding Chinese accent, I often have them listen to interview with Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan is a major movie star in the US and China, and he has been speaking both Mandarin and Cantonese Chinese for most of his life. Chan did an interview with Canadian talk show host George Stromboli, call him Strombo for short. That's especially good. George has a charming conversational tone, and Jackie is both funny and fascinating as he talks about his life and his global business show business. Pronunciation of English vowel and consonant, however, may be a big problem. There are sounds made in Chinese. When you speak in English, you may not use certain consonants your brain, which is following a Chinese system, doesn't recognize the need for them. And there are some English vowels that seem similar to Chinese vowel sound. You may subtitle Chinese vowel over them. However, English has many more vowel sounds that must be articulated well for effective use of stress, rhythm, and intonation. In comparing the phonological system of Chinese and English, Chinese and English differ greatly in the number of vowels. While English has 15 vowels, Chinese has only 5 vowels. Because of this difference, Chinese learners need to learn how to pronounce many new vowels when they start to learn English. Even when a vowel exists in both Chinese and English, the sound manner of articulation and place of articulation is different from that in English. With respect to the manner of articulation, consider the Chinese vowel I and English vowel I and I. In Chinese, there are no minimal pairs of the long vowel I and short vowel I, whereas in English the long E and short E form minimal pairs. This means that the length difference for articulating the two vowels change the meaning of word in which the sound appear. Most Chinese learners do not distinguish the long E from the short E when they speak English. Sometimes Chinese learners will produce two English consonants interchangeably because the two consonants, which form a minimal pair, have only one similar consonant in Chinese. For example, in Chinese, the consonant V only appears as an allophone of W. Therefore, altering the two doesn't create a difference in meaning. In English pronunciation, Chinese students often mix up the English V and W. and consequently articulate village as village or articulate window as window.
And this is an example of how Singaporeans use English with a Chinese accent. This video footage is a Singaporean Prime Minister who is giving a speech during the funeral process for Lee Kuan Yew. He is Lee Hsien Loong.
This island nation, Singapore. Mr. Lee did not set out to be a politician, let alone a statesman as a boy. In fact, his grandfather wanted him to become an English gentleman, but events left an indelible mark on him. He'd been a British subject in colonial Singapore. He'd survived hardship, danger, and fear in the Japanese occupation. These life experiences drove him to fight for independence. In one of his radio talks on the Battle of Merger, many years ago in 1961, Mr. Lee said, "My colleagues and I are of that generation of young men who went through the Second World War and the Japanese occupation and emerged determined that no one, neither the Japanese nor the British, had the right to push and kick us around." Mr. Lee championed independence for Singapore through merger with Malay to form a new federation, the Federation of Malaysia. He worked tirelessly to bring this about and succeeded. Unfortunately, the merger did not last, and before long, we were expelled from Malaysia. Separation was his greatest moment of anguish, but it also proved to be the turning point in Singapore's fortunes. From the ashes of separation, he built a nation. The easiest thing to do would have been to appeal to Chinese voters alone. After all, Singapore had had to leave Malaysia because we were majority Chinese. Instead, Mr. Lee went for the nobler dream of a multiracial, multi-religious nation. Singapore would not be based on race, language, or religion, but on fundamental values: multiracialism, equality, meritocracy, integrity, and rule of law. Mr. Lee declared, "This is not a country that belongs to any single community. It belongs to all of us." He checked would-be racial chauvinists and assured the minorities that their place here was secure. He insisted on keeping our mother tongues, even as English became our common working language. He encouraged each group to maintain its culture, faith, and language while gradually enlarging the common space shared by all. Together with Mr. S. Rajaratnam, he enshrined these ideals in the National Pledge. He kept us safe in a dangerous and tumultuous world. With Dr. Goh Keng Swee, he built the SAF from just 2 infantry battalions and 1 little wooden ship into a well-trained, well-equipped, well-respected fighting force. He introduced national service and personally persuaded parents to entrust their sons to the SAF. He succeeded, first because he led by example. His 2 sons did NS, just like every Singaporean son. In fact, my brother and I signed up as regulars in the SAF, Tan Jiak Ping. And we went in on SAF scholarships. Secondly, people trusted Mr. Lee, and they believe in the Singapore cause. And therefore, today we sleep peacefully at night, confident that we are well protected. Mr. Lee gave us courage to face an uncertain future. He was a straight talker and he never shied away from hard truths, either to himself or to Singaporeans. His ministers would sometimes urge him to soften the tone of his draft speeches. Even I would sometimes do that, to sound less unyielding to human frailties. And often he took in their amendments, but he would preserve his core message. As he said, I always tried to be correct, not politically correct.
And the last is Malay accent. Malaysian English, formerly known as Malaysian Standard English, similar and related to British English, is a form of English used and spoken in Malaysia. While Malaysian English can encompass a range of English spoken in Malaysia, some consider to be it distinct from the colloquial form commonly called Manglish. Manglish refers to the colloquial, informal spoken form of Pidgin English in Malaysia that some consider it to be distinct from more correct form of Malaysian English. It exists in a wide variety of form and primarily is as a spoken form of English. It's the most common form of spoken English on the street, but it's discouraged in schools, where only Malaysian Standard English is taught. Its lexic is strongly influenced by local language, with many non-English nouns and verbs commonly used, and it's significantly different grammatically from Standard English. There are colloquialisms in English that are not common outside of Malaysia, which are also used colloquially. Substitutes in other languages is Malaysia. In Manglish, Malay, or Chinese grammatical structure may be used with English word, which is often done with spontaneously, sometimes for comic effect. In Malaysian English, the pronunciation of most words and even the spelling is sometimes influenced by Malaysian language words which originate from English words, such as academic for academic and biscuit for biscuit, where syntax is concerned. The word order of non-phrase in Malaysian language is used often. For instance, phone can for phone card and not enough tall for not tall enough. Variable marking of past tense in speech, a future of as described by Platt is found as well. For example, one started working here last year. It's difficult to ascertain from general observation whether the deviant structure are merely optional linear errors or are fossilized as a feature of Malaysian English. There is a high possibility of the structure becoming a permanent feature of Malaysian English as they are still intelligible. Malaysian English is making its impact in informal use such as in seminars and news broadcasts because the number of Malaysian English speakers in various professions is growing. Whether it will develop into the Malaysian English depends on education and language policy on the use of English.
This is one example how Malaysians speak English using a Malaysian accent. One of the examples we gave is a Malaysian former Prime Minister who is giving a speech. He is Najib Tun Razak.
Oil, palm oil, rubber, which impacted in a negative sense the income and livelihood of many Malaysians. The IMF praised what they call our prudent monetary policy. They noted that the implementation of GST largely offset impact of the declining price of oil. It wasn't popular, and I know we've lost some brownie points, if you like, but it was necessary. Sometimes in politics and even in life, you need to take the tough and difficult situations, decisions, which you know will be good for you and for the country in the medium and the long term. I always akin this to when you're not well, you have to take antibiotics. Some are not so pleasant, but you have to take and you have to stay the course. You must complete your antibiotics course. And when you complete your antibiotics course, you will recover and you become fit once again. And that is essentially what we had to do. GST was necessary, and in the light of the sharp drop in the income, the government will experience a shortfall of something like 40 billion ringgit this year. If you look at the price of oil today and what it was about a year ago, it means as a nation we have lost about 40 billion ringgit. And can you imagine without GST what kind of impact, adverse impact it would have to not only to our economy but also to the welfare of our people. So it was the right decision. I don't regret it. I just want people to understand and appreciate that it is very much like taking medicine which is necessary. It might taste a little bit bitter, but you will become stronger and fitter if you go through that or go through the course. We are 18th in the world in terms of global competitiveness, as concluded by the World Economic Forum. Bloomberg rated Malaysia as the world's 5th most promising emerging market in 2015. An independent study, which has nothing to do with us, recently declared Malaysia to be the top of the Global Islamic Economic Indicator list 2014 and 2015. Malaysia, in fact, led by a large margin. I'm sure you're aware there are some naysayers back home and who have allies abroad who have tried to talk our country down. They are attempting for personal and political ends to even disrupt the stability and even question our democratic system that we prize, and which investors need to see to have confidence to place their faith in Malaysia. This, ladies and gentlemen, is not putting it. I also know that some of you are studying here.
So guys, that's an explanation of some Asian accents in English. Each accent has its own uniqueness because basically every country has its own accent. I hope this video can be useful for all of you who watch. Thank you everyone who has watched this video. Warm greetings from us, group of 12. See you next time. See you next video. Bye bye.